everyone. For this book review Wednesday, I am going to be taking a fan request, and I apologize if this took me a lot longer than expected, but I am going to be taking fan requests from now on unless there are no fan requests. So without further ado, let me discuss the book by Jeffrey Archer called As the Crow Flies. Now this book, as you can see, is also a Bible for its length, but it has nothing to do with the Bible. This story in particular follows Charlie Trumper, who is born in the early 1900s in England. And basically, his grandfather owns a sort of successful grocery place, and ultimately Charlie Trumper ends up turning this sort of into a business quasi-empire throughout the years. And although it does follow Charlie for a significant portion of the book, there is also other characters that are involved. In particular, Rebecca, who's really called Becky throughout the book, who ends up becoming Charlie's wife. You will see Miss Trentham, who's sort of the antagonist of the story. And I really don't want to give the plot away, so in a nutshell, basically she's sort of trying to sabotage Charlie's dreams of making his business empire successful. And you'll sort of see the reasonings as to why she wants to do this. And you also have Daniel, who ends up being Becky's only child, and you'll sort of see his struggles as well with trying to be sort of part of the family and trying to discover ultimately who he is, which you will discover if you choose to read the story. And also there is a portion dedicated to Kathy, who ends up being Daniel's lover in the book, and I believe one other section of the book is dedicated to Colonel, I think it's Hamilton, or let me see here. Yes, Colonel Hamilton, and he's given a section within the book. Now, in order to for my audience to sort of understand how this book works, basically it's divided into sections based upon the person that it's trying to focus on. So you'll see a whole section of the story dedicated to Charlie, and always the first chapter starting the section is told through that person's point of view. And then afterwards it's completely third person. But that happens through each and every single section of the book, where the portion of the book reflects the character in the story. So that's sort of how it works in a nutshell, and I think it's very consistent and organized in that respect by giving the audience a clear understanding of who's talking, who's involved, and it, I think, really works when it comes to looking through other people's perspectives while also gaining an understanding of how they fit within the plot. So that's, I think, a very significant part of this story. Now, this book is also focused in on the time period in particular, because it goes from the early 1900s basically to the 1970s, I believe. And the majority, though, I think at least half of it is devoted between the First World War and also the Second World War, which you'll see how Charlie ultimately participates in both. And basically, it does try to focus in on these characters within the time period that they grow up in. So this, I think, plays a sort of pivotal role in the story and what ultimately ends up happening and the circumstances that end up coming up. So I think that's really something that's important to recognize. Now, Miss Trantham, although she is the main really antagonist of the story, there's also her son who ultimately, I think, brings this sort of um, antagonism out of her, because he is really the true antagonist of the story, even though he's not given a voice really. But or in the story, basically, there's no like section of the book that's dedicated to him. But basically, a lot of his actions end up resulting in this feud that ends up happening between his mom and Charlie and his family. So really, that's at sort of the forefront of the story. Again, I think it is more of a character study book, but the plot is also very significant. So you do have a lot of both going on. You really do have an in-depth character study of these people, but you also have a very plot-driven book that does not really meander. And what I do enjoy is how consistent it is, and its language is very straightforward. It doesn't meander like a lot of other classic books do, like, for example, Anna Karenina or any of Dickens's books. They really do remain consistent to the story, and although there might be some things within the story that don't really hold a lot of weight or a lot of substance, the majority still, I think, is good in what it ultimately provides to its audience, which is a sense of understanding these characters, as well as understanding the plot and the circumstances that were going on during this length of time that the book ultimately presents. But I think ultimately that's really all I can say without giving anything away. I really don't want to spoil any aspects of this book for anybody, because a lot of it is based in trying to revolve around this sort of this sort of protagonist and antagonist attitude that ultimately Charlie and Miss Trantham take when it comes to basically Miss Trantham sabotaging Charlie's plans. So the circumstances to that are revealed for the book, and I think that's the aspect that I really don't want to give away, because I think that's a very important part to the story, and I don't really want to spoil it for anybody. So it's kind of difficult for me to ultimately address a lot of the context of the story, but really it is dedicated to this time period and to these characters, and it's really trying to present ultimately the struggles and the tribulations of the time period, as well as the triumphs and the aspect of the plot that revolves around again, Miss Trantham being the antagonist and trying to sabotage Charlie's family. Mostly through this business and through his business empire. So ultimately, though, I think that's really all I can say about this book, and it's really hard for me to discuss because a lot of it is really giving away what it's about, and I really don't want to spoil it for anyone. But I think it's a really good read if you don't mind it being a little bit long. Again, it is a lot more straightforward. This book in particular, I think, reminded me a lot of The Pillars of the Earth, because, again, you've got numerous characters and you've got a time period that had various different things going on, and you also have, you know, a protagonist-antagonist thing, too, as well. So I think a lot of the structure of Pillars of the Earth is very similar within this story. It may not be as this story, but I want to emphasize, though, is not as graphic. It's not as disturbing, I think, as something like The Pillars of the Earth. but it does have a lot of these similar elements of focusing in on characters, focusing in on plot, focusing in on how all these characters ultimately tie together to make one big plot. So that's, I think, the real heart of the story. But I think, though, that's ultimately all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I would be more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody, bye-bye. And I will be doing another fan request next week, The Crow Sex by Leo Tolstoy. I think it's how you pronounce his name. Oh, I always forget. But I'll be doing that as a fan request, and so far I've not really received any others, so I'll probably be going back to doing a list of the various books that I've come up with to do. But if anybody else would want me to do a book, I'd be more than happy to look into it. But thank you so much, and I will see you all tomorrow, hopefully, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.